Welcome, everyone, to season 1, episode 1 of the Fantasy Cast, presented by Shocker Sports. I am your host, Lachlan McTagg, joined alongside with my co-host, Mr. Ty White, and we have a special guest on episode 1 here, Christian Haggith, one of our very good friends and fantasy football guru. He's joining us to chop it up a little bit in the fantasy football world. So I'll start with you. Christian. How's it going, man?
Not bad, man. Just moving into school here. Been a hectic few days, but just kind of settling down here and ready to talk some fantasy.
Always. How's the move-in been though? Like smooth or?
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
It's a new experience. It's been fun. We've had 5 days before classes have started. It's been an enjoyable few days and just kind of easing into it, right? So can't complain. It's been nice, but definitely ready to get to work here.
How about you, Ty? How's everything on your end there?
Pretty good. Just like Christian, I'm just moved into university. Actually, I'm downtown Toronto right now. So getting used to the city life, which is pretty cool. But I'm so excited for the football season. Right here, it's basically right here. Week 1's about to start, and that always means fantasy football. So should be a good time. Really looking forward to the show. It's a pleasure to be with both of you.
I've been running around trying to figure out how to be able to watch football starting this Thursday, right? And
DAZN, baby.
Yeah, man. It's been crazy. Like I've got
you have to pay for DAZN though, don't you?
Yeah.
Probably you got to pay for everything, man. So I've got a TV down here and stuff, and just been really doing my research on streaming services because you got to be able to.
There's a bunch of Iranian websites.
No free plugs. Free plugs here. No free plugs.
Yeah, Stream East. Stream East. If you're out there, please sponsor us.
Yeah,
that'd be nice.
Give us ad-free service, please.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's because I've got Jack Bray down here too. We want to buckle down and watch some football on Sundays. So just been trying to figure that out, but it's looking good. Ty, I want to talk to you about that trade you offered me the other day, man.
You want
to tell the people what it was?
Which I think I still have it saved. If I don't have it saved.
Man.
So for quick context to any of our listeners or viewers here, we're all in the same fantasy football league. So, we see our fair share of fantasy football things. 'Tis the season.
Absolutely.
Some guys are a little too confident in what they offer.
Some guys are way too confident. It's early out in the season, so you like to call it's fleece season, baby. Like this is the time where you got those noobs coming in the league. There's a couple new guys.
I'm not in the noob zone, man.
I know you're not in the noob zone yet, but like you got to sense people out, and that's what you got. So that's why I offered my friend Christian Haggith. I'm a little bit, I just personally, based on statistics, based on in PPR leagues and stuff like that, I'm lighter on running backs, and I went more heavy wide receivers, quarterbacks, tight ends. So my running backs, for example, are DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams, which isn't the strongest set of running backs. So I like
Swift though. Swift is good.
Yeah, I like Swift too.
He's a good number 2.
I don't think Javonte personally will be in that starting role until between like week 3 and 5, until he like really starts trying to take over Melvin Gordon's touches.
That Broncos O-line is okay. I mean,
it's nothing to
marvel at.
To drool over. Yeah, exactly. So long story short, it's fleece season. You got to go for some lengthy things. So I'm like, what's up, Hags? Call him Hags. Call Christian Hags. How's Javonte Williams, Michael Gallup, and Cole Beasley sound for Antonio Gibson?
Oh, that's not what you came to me at first.
Are you serious?
No, I think it was Javonte and Michael Gallup was actually.
You didn't. It was just Javonte and Michael Gallup. And I'm thinking
God.
Absolutely not.
That's disrespectful. Dude,
there's a couple other clowns in the league.
I wouldn't say other clowns.
Yeah.
Let's be nice.
Let's
be nice.
There are clowns in the league, not including you, Mr. Haig.
Anyways, for context, I traded up to get the 7th overall pick to draft Gibson because I'm huge on him. And Ty, I kind of share your thoughts there on it's a PPR league. So I was really targeting, pass heavy backs. And I think Gibson has the potential to be that this year with the running back coach and OC coming over from the McCaffrey era in Carolina.
Allen, baby.
And saying they're going to run a similar offense to that. That's really got me excited. So I made a huge trade to get that number 7 pick and draft him. And I'm thinking like, I'm set. That's the guy I wanted. And then Ty White comes here waltzing over a couple of weeks later, trying to give me Javonte Williams.
Who's looking nice, by the way.
I'm like, oh man, yeah,
he's looking very nice, but he's also a number 2 in Denver versus Antonio Gibson, who's going to be used quite heavily in that offense with Terry McLaurin, right? Like,
I really do believe Antonio Gibson's going to be a top 5 back.
I don't
Ian
doubt
Fitzmagic. He and Fitzmagic next year. I mean, how could you go wrong with Ryan Fitzpatrick as your quarterback? You really can't.
We say that every year sarcastically, but
and something goes wrong. Something goes horribly wrong.
No,
something doesn't even go like that horribly wrong. He hasn't been that bad.
No, not recently. Just more in his past. But yeah, I think he'll be all right. Antonio Gibson
for the Bills.
Yeah, exactly. Antonio Gibson is someone I fully expect to be in the range of 7 to even as high as 4 or 3 kind of back.
Yeah.
And leading up to the later weeks, I think Javonte could be someone who's very consistent, someone who could even be better than like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I could totally see that happening
for sure.
But that's one trade I had to do, and now I'm going after Damian Harris, which isn't nearly as bad.
I've got Damian Harris is sitting on my bench. He's my 4th running back, and I'm excited about him too. Sony Michel's gone. I've actually deepened my New England running back position here. I made a trade with Owen to pick up a tight end, and I ended up having a free roster spot. So I also picked up Ramondre Stevenson. Those that don't know,
big name
backup running back in New England. So I've got two New England running backs on my roster now, and I would never have thought that was a thing. New England running backs end up always not producing. So
they always show up in the playoffs.
We'll see.
Like, remember those years where you would hear like nothing about like James White, and then all of a sudden in like the AFC Championship, he just goes off for like 2 touchdowns. You're like, where was this guy for 16 weeks?
Yeah,
it's always a committee though. That's what I'm saying. It's James White, Sony Michel, Damian Harris.
It's just the way that Bill Smelichek uses them in the system. I mean, it's very particular, and I'm very interested to see how he's going to use Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry this year. Having 2 new tight ends in the roster, especially when Gronkowski left a couple of years ago, they haven't had like such a big name at tight end, and now they have 2. I mean, Hunter Henry was pretty solid with the Chargers for like 3-4 years, and Jonnu Smith was an absolute beast last year. He worked perfectly, in my opinion, in Matt Vrabel's system in Tennessee. So I really think it's going to be the 2 tight end system quite often. Usually that means there's you have a running back in the backfield with like Damian Harris or something like that could lead to some power rushes. So hopefully there'll be big production from those 3.
But I think we've seen that in the past as well before with the Hernandez and the Gronk days, running 2 tight ends in New England. I think they'll be able to make it work, but those tight ends definitely saw a huge hit to their value. Like I got Hunter Henry like the 15th or maybe not that late, but as my backup tight end. And like, that's just the way it is. Super talented tight end, super talented receiver, but the position he's in just hurts his value so much. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, you talked about value there. I mean, we had our league had our fantasy draft quite early, just because guys were going to be in different spots around this time or so, and I know that there's some kind of late fantasy drafts happening now. So I mean, do you guys want to jump into a little bit of strategy and kind of pump your own team's tires here and talk a little draft strategy? Because I know we touched on a guy like Antonio Gibson, but I know from the reading and research that I've done, there's so many other guys too, right? Like, you guys can give any examples you want, but I mean, we can just hop right in as well to our teams if you really wanted, and talk strategy that way.
For sure. I'll lead us off here. I think my strategy's always been running back heavy in the first few rounds. I think, you don't really know the pain of getting to like week 13 and you've got no healthy running backs and you're starting like Sony Michel, and it's just not really like like a guy that's new to the league might not know the kind of the pain you have to deal with in that situation. So I always try to stack up on running backs early. They always seem to get hurt, so that sucks. But I'm hoping for a healthy season here. Knock on wood, real quick. But yeah, so and then I think if you look further down in the draft, I got Robbie Anderson fairly late as my third wideout. And I think you can hold off on wideouts like that and get guys that are good value, like Corey Davis with Ty there. And, be able to get them a little bit later, hold off on them because running backs are flying off the board. So if you can find a wideout that's, in a good situation and will be able to produce with a decently valued ADP, I think that's a huge deal and a decent strategy.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you always one example is I got a guy, Kenny Golladay, later on in the draft, later than I thought he'd go, at least considering the amount of money that the Giants paid him in the offseason. I mean, he is their guy now, right? It seems like it, but his fantasy value just kind of slipped in the draft. I feel like, his injury going in didn't help. His training camp status certainly didn't help his value or expected production, but also you got to look at guys who might slip, like Laviska Shenault. I mean, in our draft, he slipped quite a lot because
that's a huge deal. Yeah,
he's a great wideout and he's got Trevor Lawrence chucking dimes to him. But I mean, you also look at the fact that they got DJ Chark and Marvin Jones there in that offense, and that Jags O-line isn't great. So
kind of ugly, to be honest with you.
I love Shenault where he's going. I think that's a great value pick.
It's an excellent value pick, but at the same time, people can get turned off by that just based on the situation.
Yeah, I got a 2-word reason for why Kenny Golladay is going late. Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
That
O-line's pretty brutal too over at MetLife Stadium. Both O-lines are pretty brutal, actually.
Now, am I happy that I got a guy like Kenny Golladay on my team? Sure. Am I kind of scared that O-line and Daniel Jones is with him? Just a little bit. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't a little bit concerned about that situation. But when you're picking later in the draft, and I noticed this a lot with our draft, which was interesting. Like I picked AJ Dillon. I think Alexander Madison got picked. You're looking for backups. And I mean, one guy in our league drafted James Robinson fairly earlier than I would have taken him. And at the time they looked like they were going committee with Etienne and Robinson. And all of a sudden Etienne's out for the season. And then that pick immediately turns into an absolute steal because of what James Robinson did.
Genius.
Yeah, it makes him look so smart.
Same thing with Gus Edwards and AJ Dobbins.
Yeah.
Someone in our league drafted. You always feel bad for those clowns that draft someone. Oh, that's not really their fault, but
it's not their fault at all. You have to, and the same. Like I heard of some people who are like worried about COVID concerns, like they weren't going to pick DeAndre Hopkins and stuff. I'm like. I'm just going to send it. Like, I'm not worrying about anything else other than him having a fully healthy season. And I don't know if you guys are on the same page or disagree with me here, but that's just where I was standing on that front.
Yeah. I'm kind of in the middle there. I think there's some things like if you're new to fantasy football, you just kind of, A, you go off names, but B, you just go off the talent of the player themselves. But there's so much more that goes into that. Not only the situation with the offense and, coaches' tendencies or whatever, but like a guy like DeAndre Hopkins you mentioned, or I forget the other example there.
Cole Beasley.
Exactly. You have Kirk Cousins too.
A guy like if a new guy is taking like OBJ in the first round, like you don't really understand, what's making them valuable as a fantasy player versus just a good football player, because there's a huge difference.
So if you're a new fantasy football player this year and you are listening to this, one thing that I think you should gather from all this is draft a running back in the first round, please. Please, because I made the mistake of drafting Patrick Mahomes in the first round. I mean, not mistake. It was kind of a happy accident, I think, because it
last year, right?
It worked out. No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, it worked out okay, but running backs, the thing that I never understood until literally like week 2 of my first fantasy season is how valuable running backs are. And again, going back to Christian's point of not having a healthy running back in week 13, like that is crippling. It doesn't matter how talented, like it doesn't matter if you have Mahomes, it doesn't matter if you have DeAndre Hopkins, it doesn't matter if you have like AJ Brown or any kind of game breaker, you know, Tyreek, Devontae Adams, anyone like Kelsey, you name them. It doesn't matter if you have that person on your team. If he's having a decent week and you don't have a good running back, that just cripples you.
Yeah. Let me hop in there actually for a second, because we were talking about strategy beforehand, and I went for a different strategy this year than other years. I'm quite statistics oriented. So I like looking at patterns. I like looking at the different types of statistics and different statistical evidence of different things. So one thing I looked at this year was actually wins above replacement, or WAR, which is actually a baseball statistic for baseball fans out there. And basically what this was, I was new to it. It was actually off a Washington Post fantasy football article. I didn't know they were so into fantasy football, but the Washington Post actually has a bunch of good stuff. It essentially evaluates the scarcity of players, the schedule, the difficulty of the schedule, week to week averages, and overall impact. And it basically compares players of, say it's a running back, say it's Christian McCaffrey, compares McCaffrey to other running backs who are considered to be average, and gives an average or a score of how many wins above replacement that he has over the other players. So basically, how many wins could McCaffrey on his own give to your fantasy football team? So one thing I found extremely interesting, and I didn't draft running back heavy this year because of these reasons. Running backs there are about 4 or 5. So Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, and Austin Eckler, actually, who are among the highest WAR scores for running backs. It's because in PPR leagues, they're catching the ball constantly. They have a big impact for their team. Outside of those 5, we're looking at the top scores being amongst quarterbacks and wide receivers, actually getting the most amount of the highest WAR score, rather. So when people talk about drafting running backs very early and locking it up, I agree with that to some extent, but you have to look at, just because you don't want to draft someone just for the sake of them being a running back. You want their overall impact to your team. So if you're looking someone outside of, say, Austin Eckler, for example, he has a WAR of 6.8. Devontae Adams has a WAR of 6.1, which is very, very high for a wide receiver. So many people overlook the fact, actually, that they should be drafting quarterbacks in maybe like the 3rd to 4th round, as well as wide receivers as early as the mid to late 1st round. Definitely early 2nd round for sure. I'm someone who I have Stephon Diggs as my keeper, for example. I think he's phenomenal in the Buffalo system. He's absolutely wonderful. I drafted a guy like Corey Davis because I mentioned before, I like patterns. If you look at, say, Calvin Ridley, for example, he really opened up last year. And they were in similar circumstances. Corey Davis is in a similar circumstance to Calvin Ridley going into the system that he has with the Jets, where he is the new number 1 target. In preseason, he was getting the majority of targets as well. So as far as my strategy, I'm very statistically oriented, and I believe that a bit too much focus is put on running backs, and people don't know why. So I think I provided some reasoning as to why I think you should look at drafting wide receivers potentially in that mid to late 1st round as well.
That's definitely fair. And I think, I don't know, I tried to use statistics too, but I think, at some point you got to work in the eye test, and just I definitely agree. I think I do believe that you should grab multiple running backs in the first 4 rounds. That's just personally my way of going about it. But then, after that, you just got to draft the best player available, at least in those first couple rounds, just so like if you're passing on like a Travis Kelce type, that's a guy that, talk about scarcity at the tight end position. Nobody else really offers that value at tight end. Locke knows all about that.
Yeah, who's got him? This guy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Whose team I really like? Yeah, no worries, man. Go ahead.
Whose team?
Brag about. I was looking at today, Ituro's team. Man, something.
Yeah. Dude, that's
his running. Yeah, it's a little scary. His
J.K. Dobbins too before he got injured. That's the other scary.
Those running backs.
Who wants to read that team off? Because I got it here. First off,
Yeah.
unreal team name. Switch it up.
American
Najee Warrior. If
Yeah.
you got Najee Harris on your team and that's not your name, like there's something seriously wrong with you. Because that is a great name for a
Do we all
fantasy
want to
team.
quickly share our team name actually before we dive in?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm very proud of mine. Mine is Diggs in a Blanket.
We're switching it up to the player names and the team name out now, eh?
Yeah.
So,
I'm
yeah,
digging it. I'm digging
that's a
it.
solid name. That's a solid name.
I'm digsing it.
Oh, stop it.
I'll stop.
it.
So yeah, locked. Read out his team. Read out Marcus.
I guess. Hags' team name just before.
Share my name.
It's Team Bags. Pretty
team
solid.
bags. It's passed
he
down
sells
to the family. No,
because he sells the bag way too often.
Sell the bag. Get out of here. Well, just watch. Passed down through the family. That's my father's fantasy name, and just carrying on the legacy.
Yeah. It by the way, Christian Haggith comes from legendary fantasy football bloodline. Like, we can.
I'm not carrying it on all that well, but need to get a championship under the belt here.
And then my name is just Locke's Army. Pretty simple. I've been rocking with that name for a couple years now. I take my troops into battle week after week. I don't know.
It's a respectable name.
Yeah.
All right, I got Ituro's team here. So he's got Tannehill. I think that was a steal where he got him.
And it was offense. Okay. So at the draft, we all went to we dressed up. It was kind of funny, and we went to one person's house and in his backyard. And I remember every single person, myself included, Ty included, you Hags, you included, all had Tannehill eyed because when you scroll down on the ESPN app, he was fairly low. So we were hoping that no one noticed him. And I just remember the groan when he took Tannehill. I just remember everyone was just like, oh no.
Yeah. That happened
every single person wanted Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback or as like a backup or something like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Ryan Tannehill is one of the reasons that I actually have Derrick Henry lower on my running back rankings this year. I have Derrick Henry as about the fourth best running back in PPR leagues this year. Ryan Tannehill had 7 rushing touchdowns last year, and he took that away from Christian McCaffrey. A lot of that was actually there were read option plays along the goal line where he would just hold it and read that DN and take it in himself and do that crappy. That's not that crappy. He does the Air Jordan celebration.
Yeah, take it from Derrick Henry, not McCaffrey.
Yeah. But that pissed a lot of fantasy owners of Derrick Henry off last year because Tannehill was taking it in for a bunch of touchdowns.
Dude, imagine you have Derrick Henry on your team and you see that the boys, the Titans at the goal line. Tannehill drops back. And he's got the ball right there for Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's just gonna bowl through a lineman into the end zone. Easy points. And Tannehill rips that ball and goes in himself. Like that is heartbreaking.
It is one of the worst feelings.
Derrick Henry's a goal line back too, right? So
that's like where he gets his volume.
Yeah.
Not that, but the thing is that Ituro's Tennessee talent does not end there. In his wideouts, he's got Julio Jones as well, who I like. I think where he's going now, I think he offers some upside there. The
guy can ball. The guy can still ball.
We don't know what that's going to look like in Tennessee with AJ Brown. All I know is if Julio is a number 2, I can't think of it any better number 2s in the league.
I think it's going to be a little bit comparable, maybe a bit more than what, like last year we saw like Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Sure. With, Jefferson taking a little bit more majority of the volume and pass catches and stuff. But Thielen, like if you had Thielen on your team last year, like you were still getting like decent numbers week after week. And I think that'll be to a certain extent what Julio and AJ Brown will look like. With AJ Brown taking a little bit more of the lion's share of the points, but Julio will still be a very solid option because, you have Julio Jones in your offense. You got Julio Jones in your offense. You got a game-breaking player.
It's such a unique circumstance as well because I'm just off the top of my head, I can't really think of a system that's had 2 phenomenal receivers that are very the same they're built the same almost in
For
terms
sure.
of play style. Like they're two big physical moss you fight for yard receivers. And you have Julio and AJ Brown. And I can't really think of that anywhere else. Like Justin Jefferson's more finesse, and so was Adam Thielen. But these are very two similar guys. And I think it's going to be really cool having them the same team.
Defenses are going to have their hands full. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to guard. And I think that's going to open up for Derrick Henry as well. And I think it'll be interesting to see how much, there is to go around there. But we'll find out soon enough.
On paper, you could argue that it's one of the most elite built offenses in the entire NFL. I think you could argue that easily.
No doubt.
How about that defense, though?
We don't think about that, Lachlan.
Yeah, they don't ask those questions. Anyway, Arturo's team rounds out. I'll just read the rest of the names here. So it's Tannehill, QB, Kamara, Najee, Julio, Chase Claypool. Pretty good pick as well. Canadian.
Good number 2.
Shout him out.
Good number 2.
Yeah. Something to watch out, though, with Deontay Johnson and what's his name? Mr. TikTok.
Juju.
Juju.
I don't think Juju's as much of a threat this year.
No.
To that point load, I do like Deontay Johnson for sure.
I'm very high on Deontay Johnson. He's one of the best picks from like the 5th to 6th round in fantasy this year. If you grab him, you're pretty much set. He gets so many targets on that Pittsburgh team.
His volume is unreal. Considering, you could argue he's a third wider on that team, and his volume is super high. Whether he catches balls this year, I don't know. He's really fast and gets a lot of balls thrown his way. You just got to bring him in and bring him to the house.
And then rounding out his team, he's got Kittle, Kurt Samuel, Denver D in special teams, which, I mean, they're facing the Giants the first week, so they could have a field day. Who knows? Defense and special teams is one of those week-to-week things, though.
Yeah.
I mean, in the draft, that's kind of your last pick usually, that and a kicker. And then he's got Tyler Bass, quality kicker on the Bills. So
I like Tyler Bass.
all around solid team, I'd say.
And guess who's got him week 1?
Yeah.
This guy,
blanket, baby.
I don't think there's any weak teams in the league. I think that's one of the things about doing your draft online, especially on ESPN. It just throws up a suggested pick, and you can't really go wrong. There is leagues where if you're doing your draft in person, I've looked at some draft boards, and it's, it makes your jaw drop where some guys are getting picked in offline drafts.
Well, it's a nightmare because you gotta literally scroll through lists of players, not knowing their expected output. Like that's the thing with our league uses ESPN, so you have kind of a rough projection, rough outline, and if you tap on the player, you can read all about him. You can read his outlook that is written by ESPN fantasy experts and stuff, and it's very, very, very accurate. So you can trust the information there. But if you're doing an offline draft, you got to have stacks of paper coming in because
you gotta know what you're talking about for sure. I think that would offline drafts is kind of a little more OG, it's a little more legit. But no. I'm not talking bad about online drafts. Nothing wrong with an online draft.
If you and your boys pull off a successful offline draft and everyone has solid teams, the fantasy cast has your full respect. Just letting everyone know that.
Sure.
I was wondering if you guys wanted to, before we wrap up the episode, I definitely want to talk about 2 or 3 players that I think will really pop off this year. Come out of their shell a little bit. We can talk overall, and we can also talk, waiver wire grabs for week 1. Maybe some guys that might be on the undrafted list that you want to pick up, or some guys that you drafted that are now in not the greatest situations. So we can do a little key matchups, start bench. So I'll start off. This is for those of you who didn't already know, this is mainly a PPR fantasy podcast. This was what we're rolling with. So one of the players that is the most high on my list, and I'm extremely biased, by the way, because I am a huge Chargers fan. I'm a diehard Chargers fan, is Austin Eckler from the Los Angeles Chargers, who was out with injury last year. But when he was in, he almost averaged, I think over the 3 full games that he played, he almost averaged 20 points a game. In 2019, he finished 4th amongst all running backs in PPR. He has the potential.
He had a massive 2019.
Exactly. He has the potential to be one of the best running backs in PPR this year. I could seriously see him finishing within the 3 to even 1 range if all goes well and if he's healthy. If you look at the Chargers O-line, they brought in Rashawn Slater, they brought in Corey Linsley, they brought in Matt Filer. They have a lot of great talent. They have Brian Bulaga. They have an extremely improved O-line from last year, which is one of the worst O-lines in the league last year, to one of the better ones in the league this year. You have Justin Herbert, obviously, who's one of the greatest young talents in the NFL right now, the greatest young talent at the quarterback position, at least. He has a new head coach, an offensive coordinator in Brandon Staley and Joel Lombardi. And I just really think the whole team could, if they come together, Austin Eckler could be one of the best performers by far.
Yeah.
Totally
And
agree with
also,
that.
like, you look at the Chargers offense too. If you got a chance to get Keenan Allen in, early second round, maybe ish, I would take him.
Yeah.
That guy
hold off on
balls.
that.
And if Herbert's got time in that pocket, I mean, like you saw the things that Herbert was doing with less time, because as you mentioned, Ty, that Chargers O-line was not very good. I mean, Hags,
Yes.
what do you got to say here?
Yeah, I mean, I like Keenan Allen. I like that offense. I think Keenan Allen, if you can get him in the early third, late second, obviously a non-keeper league, so a true redraft. I like that pick there. I think he will do very well this year, and I totally agree with that Eckler take. Eckler would not surprise me if he's a top 3 back this year.
He could see north of 90 receptions this year, I think, easy,
sure.
And that's absolutely huge.
Huge pass catching back.
Well, when him and Melvin Gordon kind of ran that kind of committee after Melvin's holdout, they would hand the ball off to Gordon and then pass to Eckler all the time.
Yeah.
Like I remember that was like a waiver pickup. I forget who picked him up, but it doesn't matter at this point. But I guess it was
right
Christian.
Here.
Yeah,
right here,
because he got a lot of volume from Rivers on the pass catch. So he is a multi-dimensional back for sure.
Absolutely.
And
He's like
agree with
like
that.
a
100%.
wideout, but he's still an amazing running back. So it's,
to me, he's like a Darren Sproles, if you guys remember who that was. He's a very small running back, but he's absolute horse out of the backfield. So another player that I had to mention, and Lachlan is a huge Atlanta Falcons fan.
And Buffalo Bills.
And Buffalo Bills fan.
If anyone wants to come at me, I can justify reasons why I'm a fan of both teams.
Both
sides. You can hit up Lachlan at Lachlan McTagg and slide in those DMs.
Absolutely. But I'm also a huge Florida Gator fan. I respect the hell out of the Falcons. I love Kyle Pitts this year. I love him for so many reasons. He is maybe the best prospect, a tight end that we've seen since like George Kittle coming out of Iowa. Like, he's an absolute beast. He reminds me of a Kellen Winslow, which is a very old saying. It's like having a wide receiver, someone as built as AJ Brown, being a tight end who can also block, but is absolutely deadly in the pass game. He actually has a WAR of 3.3 this year. His wins above replacement score is 3.3, which is 5th amongst tight ends as a rookie who hasn't even played a snap.
He hasn't played a single snap, and he's already 5th among tight ends. I mean, you look at a guy like you look at a guy, Travis Kelce, probably I'd say the best tight end in the league. If anyone disagrees with me, that's perfectly fine.
For sure.
You have to put you can't. It's not right for you to say to a linebacker, cover Travis Kelce downfield. That's just not morally correct.
Yes.
Like, you need to put a DB on Kelce. And
absolutely,
I think Kyle Pitts is a lot more athletic and a lot more shifty than Travis Kelce. So if you're putting a linebacker on Kyle Pitts to start, he's going to eat him for breakfast.
I completely agree. And it's very difficult. Like you said, I mean, the only team that really figured out how to play the Chiefs this year was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, when they had, Levante David and Devin White all over the field, which was a huge problem for Kansas City. He couldn't even score a touchdown.
You also have a linebacker tandem like that. You can do what you want against any team. Like that was a perfect game defensively there.
Yeah.
Can I talk about someone? Can I talk about someone quick?
Go ahead.
Absolutely, Lachlan.
I don't know why, but this year I love Miles Sanders.
Really?
I don't know why I love Miles Sanders.
That's a hot take, Lock.
It's very hot, I know. And I would look to get it. Like if he's there in a keeper league, he'd probably be around mid to late second, roughly.
Yeah.
And in a true draft, maybe late third,
Yeah, that's fair.
right?
He's like
Oh,
the
man.
Walmart Austin Eckler is basically what he is.
Yeah.
The only thing is, like, yeah, you hear from everybody. He's just the only downside from him is he's big play dependent. If
Yes.
he's not breaking off those massive runs, he's not really getting the yardage or the volume that you'd love. But
and that's why it's a very hot take on my end. Obviously, coming out strong in the first episode here, but
we'll see how it plays
I
out.
think that like that O-line is getting healthier by the day. That O-line is completely different than the end of last season. They are ravished with injuries, and Hurts, I think, a full year, full off season, learning the playbook, learning the system with the Eagles. I think that him and Sanders are going to run a lot more RPOs, just considering about how much more run oriented Jalen Hurts was than Carson Wentz. And I think with Wentz out of that system, then that allows Hurts to be a little bit more creative with Miles Sanders. And I think that'll pay dividends for both of them. And another guy on the Eagles that I think will have a bounce back season this year is Jalen Reagor. And I know that Ty and I have talked a little bit about Reagor. And I mean, did the Eagles miss in the first round twice in the last couple
Travis
years?
Fulgham just got cut.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Fulgham
Yeah.
got cut, and they have another rookie in Devonta Smith, right?
Yeah.
So that team is not even, their offense isn't awful actually.
But Reagor's a perfect candidate to have a bounce back season because the spotlights can people have I almost forgot about Jalen Reagor.
Yeah.
He was supposed
to be pretty good last year. Actually, I had him. I drafted him in the later rounds, and it was unfortunate that he was injured because he's a very underrated player. I feel like he could Lachlan. I think that's a very good take. Actually, I think he could have a good season.
I just have a weird feeling about both those players, and I'm probably gonna get slammed for this a little bit, but that's okay.
All right.
I can take
quickly before we end up here, but on the topic of rookie wideouts, I can give you 3 names. 2 of which you could probably get on waiver wire. One of which, Elijah Moore, is probably sitting on a roster right now in almost anybody's league. I really do think Elijah Moore is going to have a great year, have a great rookie year. I think he's a great candidate late in the draft. Terrace Marshall as a waiver wire pickup, and Rondale Moore as a waiver wire pickup. Those are guys to keep your eyes on. There's a plethora of other rookie wideout talent out there. So every year though, it's like somebody pops off the first week in wideouts, and then everybody's placing their bid, trying to get him in waivers. So it's kind of a waiting game almost. But
yeah,
those are guys to keep your eyes on, and we'll see how that plays out. Rondale Moore is like second, third, maybe even fourth wideout there in Arizona. Terrace Marshall looks at least the third wideout in Carolina, but we'll see how that plays out with Curtis Samuel gone now.
As well, yeah, Darnold in that offense too. I think he's destined for a pretty good season.
I think that helps out DJ Moore in particular. Yes. I think even more than Robbie Anderson. You saw Teddy Bridgewater loved Robbie Anderson. I'm hoping I want to see DJ Moore kind of get that same love.
DJ Moore is an elite receiver when he's given the ball. Absolutely.
No
doubt. Two more names. Brandon Ayuk. I loved Ayuk coming in last year. I drafted him in both my leagues.
Yes.
He was an absolute. You saw what he did in that game against, I believe it was San Francisco, on prime time, where he got the ball, he ran for like 20 yards, hurdled the man, and went into the end zone. It was absolutely spectacular. He is such a beast. Coming out of ASU, I think he's such a great wide receiver. That offense, Deebo Samuel is not Deebo Samuel anymore.
No, and I'm
George
just
Kittle
say that,
is declining.
For sure,
it's time for Ayuk. It's time. Trey Lance is going to get in there by like week 6 or 7, I think, like that. And they're going to be pretty good.
Another thing too is Kyle Shanahan. This is just a side note for a couple different things. Kyle Shanahan loves using multiple running backs. So if you're looking at, a guy like Mostert, maybe hold off on him a little bit, because
Trey Sermon show.
The Trey Sermon too, yeah.
Trey Sermon's another name in there. You can't really, they're going to flip back and forth. You don't know who's going to come out on a second down and 6 if they're going to run the ball. And if there's one wideout on the Niners that you should take, it is definitely Ayuk. And one guy to get rid of right now, try and trade him, try and do whatever, try and get some value for him at least, is Deebo Samuel. Because again, he's not what he was, and he's just going to get kind of swallowed up in that offense a little bit by Kittle taking a lot of volume, because he can still do it just fine. And the run game as well with Shanahan.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Trey Lance does with that team. I think that could provide upside for a guy like Ayuk, like you said, Ty. I'd be surprised if it took him till week 6 or 7 to be in there. I think
that's being safe. I think it's ridiculous if they don't play him. I think there should be a new thing for quarterbacks called the Justin Herbert effect, where you just don't tell them and throw them in there week 2 or week 3 and be like, you know what, this is your offense. You go see. And what if they ball out? Like, what if they just completely ball out?
You just have the trainer almost kill the starting quarterback, and then you get your rookie quarterback in there and let him ball. The Justin Herbert effect.
Exactly. Shove a golf tee up Jimmy Garoppolo's lung 20 minutes before the game.
Oh,
that'd be absolutely. That's basically what happened to Tyrod Taylor. I feel so bad.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
All right.
And then one more name I have to just say quickly before we end is Joshua Palmer. I feel like he could be an Ayuk type player. He was the Chargers' 3rd round draft pick out of Tennessee. This guy was someone who was cooking Patrick Surtain in the SEC. He's such an underrated player. He had statistically the worst quarterback in college football throwing him the ball at the University of Tennessee. Now he's coming offense with Justin Herbert. The Chargers cut one of his competitors named Tyron Johnson. Actually, very surprisingly, I was surprised by that. I think definitely Josh Palmer by the mid to late weeks is a fantastic investment, as he could easily be the wide receiver 2 on the Chargers by that point.
Good take.
Well,
you know the Chargers more than anybody, so I'll take.
That's my team.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. if you were not alone when saying that the last 3 names that Ty named on that Chargers O-line, you're kind of lost. Like, it's okay. Ty's a pretty committed Chargers fan, so just bear with him a little bit.
Thank you.
And I
appreciate that.
I think we thoroughly loaded our users with fantasy football content. Listeners.
Just before we end off as well, I might just have to show the fans at home this disgusting T-shirt I'm wearing right now. I mean, it is a Justin Herbert T-shirt that says Herb Ale Remedy. I personally don't smoke pot, but it is basically a Justin Herbert marijuana shirt, which I absolutely love now. I think it's hilarious. So hopefully that'll bring us some good luck this year.
For those listening to the audio version of this, Ty just gave you the little description. So
it'll be on the Instagram. It'll be on the Instagram. Don't worry.
Absolutely, it'll be on the Instagram.
Speaking of which, this concludes season 1, episode 1 of the Fantasy Cast, presented by Shocker Sports. I had a brain fart there. Episodes will be released every Wednesday, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. For everyone at Shocker Sports, we like to thank Christian Haggith for coming on today. For my co-host, Ty White.
My pleasure.
I'm Lachlan McTagg, and we will see you guys next week.